Let's move on and talk about Simon Zebo, because we haven't had the opportunity to hear what you think about this just yet. So Zebo made the decision to leave, was linked heavily with Racing, although the information that we've heard is that he hasn't actually signed a deal with Racing, and so now there's a bidding war between a bunch of French teams, which obviously is a great position for him to be in. I think generally people thought that he'll continue to play for Ireland while he's under contract to Munster. Joe Schmidt was like, no, not happening.
Yeah, harsh. I was sure that he'd be allowed his year of continuing the squad. He's been the inform fullback undoubtedly this season in Ireland. Rob Kearney had a good showing last weekend, but he's barely been on the pitch. So to find for Zebo to find himself in the extremities, he must have sensed that there was a chance of it to come, but he must have thought, surely Joe won't be that ruthless, not that immediately after I've handed my decision in.
Yeah.
Personally, I think you have to be careful. So there's two lines of thinking here. I think, yes, Joe setting out his stall. I think the powers that be within the union will be delighted to see that decision has been taken. Whether they have had a quiet word with Joe on top of him making his own decision, who knows? But Joe talked about what was the term he used, about future-proofing the Irish system. And what that means is we can't compete with the money that the Saracens, the Bats and the French teams are going to offer to our players, our international players. So we have to have our own card to play, and that is that if you go abroad, all likelihood is you're not going to get to play for Ireland while you're gone. So you do go and pick up the money, but you lose your international game. And to some people, the draw will be too big, i.e. Simon Zebo. To others, the thought of not playing international rugby whilst being a professional rugby player is unthinkable. They've been very clever in not defining it by a la Wales and Australia with their 60 cap rule.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be circumstances like Johnny Sexton, like a Conor Murray in time, like a Tadhg Furlong, where you have to be able to pick these guys because they're comfortably number one. So I think all in all, it's been very smart from Joe Schmidt and from the IRFU. But I would feel very, very sorry for Simon Zebo, because he's a player that everyone wants to see play. He's exciting. He is great value in a green jersey. He's been, he's played in 10 of the last 12 tests under Joe Schmidt, and now he finds himself in the wilderness, having just made a call beyond rugby. I do see it as that. I would be cynical in saying that at times. Cynical in thinking with other people that mightn't be the case. I do think with him, with his lineage, with his father a French speaker, with his Spanish girlfriend, his two kids, he's a lot to think about beyond, playing international rugby. And as well, he's not a cert in the World Cup team in 2 years' time. Definitely not. As much as he's found himself playing 10 of the last 12 games. Everyone fit? Does Simon Zebo get in Joe Schmidt's starting 15? I don't think so.
A couple of things, right? He's at that age now, 27, where everybody would previously have assumed he'll hang on to the World Cup and then he'll go and get his money in France. But if you look at the stats that are coming through from the Premiership in terms of the injuries, that must be filtering into conversations and agents thinking there's no guarantee you're going to play another 3 years. The way that the intensity of these games is ramping up, the propensity for players to get injured, you might need to make your money now.
Yeah, there is that, but
the market's flooded then after the World Cup.
It is, so that's the other point. So every South African and New Zealander that's finished with playing international at 29, 30 is cashing in, and they don't want to give up their opportunity of winning a World Cup to leave a season early, a la Aaron Cruden. He's pretty much written himself out of a New Zealand setup. So it's the smart time to move. It's the brave time to move. But as Simon Zebo's finding out, it's a painful move at the same time, because as much as Joe Schmidt saying, there's another squad to be picked in February for Six Nations.
Good luck with that.
What?
And he will lose out financially, won't he? Because he wasn't on a central contract, so he'll still be on his provincial contract, which expires at the end of the season, and then the additional monies that he would have earned by virtue of the fact that he's playing test matches.
Correct.
He loses out on all that. So I wonder, has he set a path that others will choose not to follow in the future? And by that I mean, if you're Simon Zebo or somebody in his position and are 2 years' time, so midway through a World Cup cycle or 2/3 of the way through it, is there a way to keep this to yourself? So that...
I'd say his hand was being forced as well by Munster, that they were looking for a decision too, because you can't wait till the last moment to go and try and replace
You can wait
Simon
until the
Zebo.
end of March, though, after you've beaten England on St. Patrick's Day.
I don't know if clubs are going to hang around that
But you can
long
agree.
for players
You
to,
can
for a decision.
agree off under the table with somebody
No,
else.
but I mean, the issue isn't with this club that you've signed for. The issue is
he's contracted to play for Munster. What could they do?
But they want to be able to plan for next year.
Oh,
too.
I understand that. I
Yeah.
understand exactly
So
where
they're
Munster
not-
would be coming
yeah,
from.
yeah, so they're
but
not-
Simon Zebo could just refuse to play ball
Yeah,
and
but
just say, do you know, I really don't know what my future holds.
contracts have been removed before.
Have they?
So, yeah, they have been. Where, right, you've got until a particular deadline day to accept that bid, or it's going to be taken off the table. That happened to me. It happened to me a couple of years ago. My last contract, we were struggling to negotiate just before Six Nations, and it was going to be a 2-year, and I knew I was done in my head after that, and we couldn't get it done the week of training prior to Six Nations, and they said, listen, we're going to take the negotiations away until after Six Nations and remove it altogether. And I had a word with Declan Kidney. I said, that's pretty good for my headspace to not know over the course of the Six Nations about where I stand. Plus, at the end of the Six Nations, you're in a less powerful position to make a call because lots of other clubs will have made their signings in advance of that.
Oh, you might pick up an injury as well.
I was like, I'm not having that. So I said, if you want me to play well in the Six Nations, I need you to be able to go, and we need to iron this out. There's not much extra that we're pushing for, so let's try and find a happy medium, which we did and got it signed 2 days before the first game.
But I think at 27 years old, I just wonder what players will have seen what has happened to him. Like, he should be playing in the Six Nations next year.
He should be.
Like, it's 18 months out from World Cup. And he's not going to be because of this decision that Joe and the RFU have taken, which I don't really argue with, because I think the term that he used, future-proofing, is actually the right term, and you can see why they're doing it. But I think players, if they're really looking after themselves and their agents, they can still get the deal done in France or England or wherever it might be, but they don't have to let their province know until...
But as far as... So, talking to some people in the industry over the last week to see what the crack was with this situation, the pressure is coming on to get everything done in advance of the Six Nations. So Simon Zebo would need to have said, yeah, I am signing or I'm not signing before the Six Nations, at which point they go...
But not necessarily,
you can't ask
though.
Simon Zebo and him go, I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
No, you say, I just don't know.
That's not going to be
I
accepted.
don't know.
Well,
I need
that's
Six
where they're
Nations
going
is
to
such a big
force their
deal for me.
hand.
I need to get...
That's not going to fly anymore.
Yeah.
They're going to force players' hand because they know exactly what they're doing.
You might
they
get the
know that
November
they're trying to
internationals.
hedge their bets a bit and try and get the most.
And they probably know they've signed, in fairness, because it wouldn't make any sense.
But it would
'cause-
normally involve a centrally contracted player. And in this case, it doesn't. Another player in this situation wouldn't be losing the money that Simon Zebo was going to lose.
Well,
I don't know what he gets paid on a game-by-game basis.
Nor do I, and I
I'm
don't
sure
know
it's
whether he
pretty
has it written
sizable.
in as extras besides the match fee and win bonus that every player would be entitled to. I think that's only based on central contracts where you play 8 of 10 test matches in a year and you get an additional lump sum. So it's pay for play. So that tends to happen to the older players that might struggle with injuries and mightn't get as much game time. So you try and hedge their bets a small bit.
Yeah. Can we talk about Peter O'Mahony? Because he's the other big name whose contract is out at the end of the season. And O'Mahony's standing in the game on a global level is at a level that's higher than Simon Zebo's, you would say.
Yeah,
like
it is.
he was first test captain of the Lions, captain of Munster, and is also entering the peak of his career. We were talking about this earlier. Has been very durable with the exception of that one injury, which was like just a twisted knee. I'd say that there are a number of French clubs at the moment who are very interested in Peter O'Mahony. Certainly that's the grapevine that you're hearing at the moment.
He's the type of game for them, doesn't he?
And so, like, if I'm them and I'm looking at the situation where if I sign this player, Joe Schmidt's not going to pick him. Happy days.
It's a dream for them.
I'm now going to give him whatever money
That's
he
more
wants.
money. Yeah, I've got that player guarantee. It's like having Easton Asiwa in your squad the whole time round, or Scott Fardy.
And so that's accidentally making him more attractive to the big French teams at the minute.
Yeah, it is.
So do you go, by the way, this doesn't apply to Peter Mahoney, Sean O'Brien, Tadhg Furlong. Like, do you make a list of, and do you let that
No, because you back yourself that you're not going to lose a core of big players, that they're still going to be offered enough to be, and the carrot of playing international rugby as well is going to be too much for them. The age profile is going to be a big thing, guys. That's why I find it so unusual with Zebes, and I didn't expect that at 27 he's a lot of really good years still to come.
Yeah.
So I think you will see it with guys post World Cup going and try and get a bigger payday elsewhere, but that's why I think it was a shock to the system for a lot of people. Some people say it wasn't a shock to the system. It really was, because he's been Munster the last number of years. He's gotten bums on seats. He is X factor for a marketing team, because he is the sort of guy that people will come and watch on their own. But if I can just talk about, rather than just mention Pete, we can come back to him. But on Zebo, it's interesting. I was looking back on the dynamic and type of winger and back three player that Joe Schmidt has picked over the course of his Irish tenure as coach. And Zebes and Luke Fitzgerald are probably two guys that are quite similar in that they can turn a game, they can change it in an instant, but they haven't always been number one selections. He's gone for steadier guys like Trimble, Tommy Bowe in the winter of his career, Dave Carney's, Fergus McFadden's, even Conway coming in now. They're a particular type of player. They don't have Dennis Hickey's speed. They don't have David Campese's feet, or even feet of the other two aforementioned players in Zebo and Luke Fitzgerald. They're very good in the air. They're defensively strong. They're solid, very well-rounded players without being exceptionally good at one aspect.
Yeah.
So it doesn't shock me to see Zebes wondering as well, am I in his his first 15
choice
plans?
anyway.
Am I? Yeah. Like, there's a World Cup to come, but it's still a good way away. We've got a couple of other younger guys starting to break into the scene. Stockdale, obviously. Sweetenham's good to see that he's in the setup, who offer a lot of X factor as well. So I just wondered, did Simon Zebo think,
what's the point?
Is this my best move on looking at the full picture?